Welcome to Morning Infusion with Dr. V, where we are intentional about connecting you with other entrepreneurs that have overcome and want to provide value to the audience. It's Dr. V here, where our coaching program teaches nurses how to work from their computers anywhere around the world, making money and owning their own time, building profitable nurse coaching and consulting businesses. We do have a masterclass that's coming up. You can join the Millionaire Nurse CEO group on Facebook. We will be going live in the group. Also, we will, if you want to purchase VIP, you get the opportunity to ask me questions. But today we're going to be talking to Alex Balish. And so, Alex, tell us a little bit about you. We kind of, and we'll talk about how we met, but tell us a little bit about you, about how, what you do. Like if you had a brief bio of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. V. Yeah, we did kind of meet in a weird situation, but it was all good. My name is Alex Balish. I own a company called Care First Training Group, and we teach parents to professionals on how to save a life through CPR, first aid, babysitting training, and OSHA training. So, I started my career just like anybody else. I wanted to learn how to play with the lights and sirens of the ambulance. And right when I graduated high school, I decided to sign up in the Summit Volunteer First Aid Squad, and I've been there ever since. And from that, making other business choices and whatever else, I decided to become a CPR instructor. Actually, my sister-in-law said, "You're going to become one," because I was living out with her in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And I was a volunteer doing that. And it was great. You really get to hands-on, and you get to work with people like yourselves, nurses, doctors, whomever. And then, long story short, I was in between jobs. I'm like, why don't I resurrect all my training cards and branched out on my own. Went on a thing called Living Social, which is similar to Groupon. Had a huge deal, bought all my equipment that I started out with, and I've been going ever since. So, it's been an interesting ride being an entrepreneur, but I love every second of it.
I love it, love it, love it. So let's start back. So you said you like the lights and sirens, and so that's the reason why you became an EMT, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, it's about helping people. And one thing that I love about nurses and working in this world, because I've tried to go to nursing school, and I know you can always go back, but you know what? There's a point where you're just like, I got to keep going. And I learned at a early age in my career, it's all about hand holding, and it's all about making those people feel comfortable, making them feel as though they're protected. And I think that there's something to be said for that. I love that aspect of it. Yes, there's all the excitement of it, but at the end of the day, it's about making people happy and making people comfortable. And if you can provide that, I think I've learned more from this type of career than I've learned in just about any type of career in my life. So I'm really blessed.
Yeah, it's amazing because, one of the reasons why I went to the emergency department, and I tell people this all the time, was because I had a patient that was upstairs and, because I worked on a med surg floor,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to be able to recognize an emergency. I wanted to know when to run and when not to run.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was, I was just, I just didn't have time to be running for stuff that I didn't need to run for, right? And so there are
Mm-hmm.
certain things, like the airway, airway, circulation, breathing, those things you need to run for. But
Right.
certain things are long-term things that you don't necessarily need to run for that moment, but you do need to take care of it and execute on it. And so I wanted to learn the difference between that. And that's one of the reasons why I went to the emergency department. And that's one of the reasons why I stayed in the emergency department for such a long time. So I think that is definitely one of the things that has been phenomenal. So
Absolutely.
now let's talk about your transition from working for someone else to having the freedom to make your own schedule. So you were working for someone else. So what happened in that transition that ticked you and said, I need to do this?
Well, let me go back to when I was 8 years old. My family owned a liquor store, and we that's all I ever knew, first off, was owning your own business. We weren't the type of people that just worked for people. My brother was in the military, yes, but my other brother's a dentist, and my sister does her own thing in terms of video. But I was working for somebody, and honestly, it just didn't work out. I got fired. It wasn't a good fit. I was in the insurance business. And I said to myself, you know what? Everything is starting to run out, meaning unemployment. And this is way before COVID. And I'm like, let me just do what I love until I can get back on my feet and make my next move. And I saw that there was an instructor class. I got all my cards back and I started teaching for the hospital. And I realized, you know what? It's not that hard to start your own business. It's hard to keep your own business, but it's not that hard to start your own business. And then I just went from there. You know, I got an LLC, I got a website. I did all the things that I knew I needed to do to make this thing great, because my biggest problem, and I drive my wife nuts about this, I want to be not good, but I want to have a great company. I want to have a company that people, one, will respect and whatever else, but more importantly, that I can have employees and provide work for them so that they can provide for their family. And that's where I really am passionate about, is not only just helping the people because I love the training, but also I love working with the staff and getting them to get what they want, which is work and also spreading the brand. So that's kind of where I started, was from that, and it's kind of just gone from there. I've done a lot of word of mouth business. What's nice about my particular industry is it's great for nurses because, one, you can do it as you need it. It's part-time or it's full-time, depending on what you want to do. And it's in a wheelhouse that you're already in, meaning, you need to have your CPR card. So if you're gonna, that's one of the reasons why I became an instructor. I was sick of taking the trainings myself, and it's so much nicer. And I was teaching a class last night, to a bunch of nursing students. I used to say to them all the time in the middle of class, it's so much nicer to be on this side of the table than that side of the table. Meaning, you're doing everything wrote. And I think the biggest problem in my industry is this: everybody knows that you've taken probably a bazillion CPR classes in your career. And every time you hear, oh, I got to recertify my CPR, you like roll your eyes. Oh gosh, it's like 2.5, 3 hours into my life. Well, we try to make it fun. I know that, but we're just trying to get you up to speed. And I think that there's something to be said for that. And that's why I love the education piece. I might get somebody with really small hands. You get some nurses, they have really small hands, and you teach them a new technique. And they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Why? Now they have another tool in their tool chest that they may do. They could be on a floor that never does CPR. They could be in a doctor's office. Oh yeah, I did that back in the day. I just want people, especially nowadays, to be keeping this front of mind, because we've got Damar Hamlin who just fell down, and I mean, exactly, it can happen anywhere. And in New Jersey, a couple of weeks ago, a 12-year-old boy in Newark went down. The coach that normally is there wasn't there. Nobody knew CPR. Nobody did anything. So this poor kid died. Now, who knows if the CPR would have helped him or not, as you all know, but it's about the plan. How many times have you talked to your nurses about getting there 5-10 minutes early to give a good report, being there 5 or 10 to give a report, to get a report? And that's what it comes down to. For me, it's about accountability. And trust me, I'm not perfect. I'm not. I'm in a glass house throwing stones because I'm late. I do all those other things, but we try to be as systematic as we can, and we try to be as professional as the profession should be.
And I think that is definitely key, because whenever you have someone who goes down like Damar Hamlin, so some of you know the story of Damar Hamlin. For those of you who don't know, Damar Hamlin was in a football game, and I was watching the game,
Oh,
and
were you?
I was watching it, and I remember, because my husband's a huge football fan, and so we were watching the game, and I saw him go down. And when I saw him go down, so basically what they diagnosed him with is commotio's cordis, I do
I
believe.
can never say it. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you said it a lot better than I did,
And
Dr.
so
V.
so basically what happens is the heart, you have your beats of the heart and you have stroke repetition. Of course, you have beat after beat after beat after beat. And between beats, you have that repolarization of the heart. And so because of that, what happens if you hit, and it's a very rare thing, but if you hit right at that moment, then what can happen is you can go into cardiac arrest. And so whenever you go into cardiac arrest, obviously you need CPR. And there's what is the percentage? Is it 23% of
I
people will?
believe it's around there. I mean,
Okay.
the thing about Damar Hamlin is, and that your listeners probably know more about this than I do, but one, it was an event. It should have never happened in a football. It usually happens more in baseball, uh, softball, maybe lacrosse or field hockey.
So why does
And
that happen more there?
because it's a small object that's hitting right here. Okay,
Mm,
as opposed to a helmet or something. When you look at that hit, it doesn't look as bad as what it was. And again, I'm
mhm.
not saying that it has to look bad, but at the same time, it's usually that blunt force of that small object, a hockey puck, something like that that just hits it at the wrong. Plus, football players have huge pads on compared to those other sports.
That's true.
So, I
That's
mean,
true.
and I tell people in my classes, one, he was a healthy athlete. Two, it was witnessed. Three, they jumped on him right away. He went to a great hospital. But the fifth reason, he was really, really, really lucky. And you can believe what you want, but you put it in whatever you believe's hands. And I'll take that over medicine sometimes, because it was really amazing to see the system work the way it did. And I love that we're even having this conversation, because if we had this before that, even a day before that, this conversation would be totally different.
Hmm.
And I think that, he's actually doing a campaign for the American Heart Association now. And how does this relate to nurses that want to get into business? Well, you need to be on top of everything that's going on. Meaning this, I got a text from a friend of mine that night about this, and I kind of blew it off because I could have cared less about the Buffalo Bills and the whoever they played. I'm a Giants fan. Like, what do I care? I looked at it and I'm like, oh my gosh. I talked to my assistant and we started putting social media out right away. I did a live right away. And that's the thing. If you really want to be a business owner, you have to be on top of stuff, because the world changes. Yes. And there's Twitter and there's all this. And yes, you don't have to be there every second. But if you're going to run a business like I do, I need to know what the weather is in California, because I live in New Jersey. The people that I work with, they have family out there. They have family in Atlanta. They have family all over the country. So if something happens in the world, I want to be able to put a media post out there. I
So
try
why do
to.
you need to know what the weather is in California?
If there's an
Explain that.
earthquake, I'm going to
Uh-huh.
put out emergency preparedness. What do you
Uh,
do for an earthquake? What do you do if it's heat stroke?
so
What
that's the offshooting of the CPR. Yeah.
Absolutely, because it's all
Okay.
part of the first aid. And you're probably like, I know it sounds crazy, right? It does, but that's the way. Why do people buy? They buy because they're at front of mind. And that's why I always am looking at these type of disasters. I mean, I was a disaster response. I worked for the Red Cross for a while, and that's what we did. So yes, maybe I'm a little overkill with what I do, but at the same time, if a major event happens, I try to make sure I have value by putting stuff up there that people want to see. Eh,
So that's good. That's good. That's good. So one of the things that is very true, and this is one of the things that I talked about in the Six Figure Nurse CEO conference, is that whenever you're a nurse, like we have the ability to be able to do the things that everybody else can't do specifically. So what I mean by that is that when you think about Maslow's hierarchy, so some people know who Maslow's hierarchy is, or who Maslow. He was a scientist during the '60s, and one of the things that he talked about was the hierarchy of reaching self-actualization to get to do the thing that you would do, whether anybody paid you for it or not. And so at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy, the base of Maslow's hierarchy, because you have to start with a great foundation, is your physiological being, right?
Hmm.
And one of the things that we have to understand is that everything that we do as a nurse, everything that we do as a healthcare professional, everything has that base involved in it, right? And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we providing, number one, providing the CPR that you provide, and also providing emergency preparedness for those disasters to happen is really, really key. And so, making your own schedule. Let's talk about that, because that is one of the joys. Now, of course, entrepreneurship has its of course it has its
Ups and downs.
nuances, ups and downs, right? And then you have to deal with the ups and downs, but so does not being an entrepreneur as well. So you can work for someone else and you can deal with that, or you can work for yourself and be the leader of your own company and do things as you are to do them. So tell me about what are the advantages of making your own schedule.
Well, today, for instance, I can drop off my daughter, come and do something like this, go do a CPR class. I'm done by 12, 1 o'clock, depending on what the class is. I can pick my daughter up. We don't have to worry about all the shuffling of that. If we have a family event, I can kind of plan around that. And um it's just about the freedom to making your own schedule. The problem with that is you have to still be very consistent in what you do. And that's the thing. I'm all about the system for me, because I think that entrepreneurship and nursing work so hand in hand. And I know you talk about this already, but it's such a great synergy in terms of this. You may work shift work, so you're working nights, you can do stuff during the day, you work 3 days, you're off two, or whatever your schedule is. And it just really lends itself so much to a side hustle or a full-time hustle or whatever kind of hustle you want to do, whatever they're calling it now. That said, I just love the fact that if my wife needs me to do something in the middle of the day, I can work my schedule around that, even sometimes on the fly. Now, there is, like I said, it can be a little bit rigid sometimes, but on the whole, if you're 0 to 100, I'm like a 98 in terms of positivity towards it. But the other, and I have to say this in terms of entrepreneurship, this is the key right here, is your business card or whatever you do. Because my wife is a teacher and she never really understood the entrepreneurial uh, way. And I told her, see this card? It's worth money. Because if you give it to the right person, now I'm a commission salesperson. If I don't sell, I don't make money. I don't provide for my family. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that in a great way. Because when the money is good, you put it in your pocket, but you have to do your books and you have to make sure you pay yourself and you pay everybody. It is amazing. The downside is it's a funnel. And I know you probably go over this with your course. You got to always feed the funnel or else you're going to be broke. You have to always be marketing. You always have to be selling yourself. And I think that a lot of times caregivers do a really bad job of that because they're caring and they're giving, but they have to realize that it's a business and they have to find that niche, whatever it is, whether it's what I do, whether it's opening their own, healthcare aid company, to whatever it is. Um, it's a job and you have to treat it like that, because it's like a plant. If you feed it, it will grow. If you don't, it will die. And I know you go over that kind of stuff. And that's something I believe since day one, when my dad told me I had to add and subtract on a cash register. It's just, it comes down to that accountability and making yourself, put yourself in the best position to win.
Yes, and that's very key. I think that you said something that is very key. Is that's discipline, because when you don't work for someone else, and I think that this is number one. There's two things that you said. Number one is the marketing piece, and I think that that's one of the values of our program, is that we give you the ability to stay on all the time, and that's
Hmm.
through the ads and through the funnel and just that consistent piece. But not just that, it's the consistency and the accountability and the discipline that you have. And so for me, I think one of the things, I talk hot mess, okay, about this doctorate degree. Okay, I'm just going to tell you. All right, if I had to, there are some advantages to the doctorate degree.
Okay.
But there are definitely some disadvantages. The disadvantage is that, I feel like I could have done exactly what I'm doing with my associate degree.
Absolutely.
Matter of fact, I know I could have. But I had to, it's almost like I didn't have a blueprint to go by, right? I didn't have anybody that was in my space. And so one of the biggest advantages of the doctorate degree is that I have my son, he's my youngest, he's precious. And so what he would do is he would come in, you know how you have your paper due at 11:59. He would come in, at 6 o'clock and want to talk to me. And I'm like, dude, my paper's due on Wednesday at 11:59. What you doing? Okay. Because and I knew that I had to be disciplined enough. So I started getting up very early in the morning. So my ritual routine now is getting up at 4 a.m. in the morning, being intentional about every single moment of the morning, so that I can get things done, so that I can spend time with my family, so that I can devote to them, so that I can build the business like the business. But it had to, that is one of the biggest things that doctorate degree gave me, was the ability to be very disciplined, because I've gotten more stuff. We've already had a team meeting this morning. We've already, there's already things that are on the books that my team knows that we've got in place this morning, right? But that's because I developed that discipline during my doctorate degree. So that whole thing about discipline is
I'm exhausted just listening
huge.
to you with your schedule, because I haven't done any of that, folks. Yeah, I'm talking a good game, but compared to this lady right here, I am like nothing. And I think you're right though. It does come back to that plan, and it comes down to what value. What do you value? You value your time with your kids, but you don't value it at 11:59. And we've all been there with kids. But at the same time, it could be your husband, it could be your wife, or whatever. I just think that the fun part is this stuff. Everybody loves doing this stuff,
Mhm.
because I've done podcasting and all this other stuff. It's all the other stuff behind the scenes that drives you crazy. But if you do it right, look at what you have right next to you. A woman that has her doctorate and that is teaching people how to do things to learn how to fish, so to speak. And that's what this comes down to. So it's just like nursing. I mean, I wanted to be a nurse for years, but you know what? I've just realized that ship is not, I'm not ready to go back on that ship. So I found a new way, and I love education. And I think that education is such a key. And the one thing that I think about, whatever these nurses want to do, everybody complains about the younger generation not knowing. And it's not just now, it's always. Well, my feeling is this. And when I'm in my classes, I tell them, I tell my student nurses, listen, find a mentor. And it doesn't mean you call them up every week. It just means that when a job opening or whatever else, find a mentor and learn from them. And then I tell the older nurses, you know what? You got some great information. Why don't you share it? And why don't you be open to being a mentor? Because the perfect nurse is not you. It's all your experience, and you get somebody that's younger. You put those two people together, and I'm not talking age, I'm talking experience. That's a perfect nurse. That's a perfect anything. And I'm sick and tired of people saying, "Oh, well, what about this and what about that?" You know what? It's not that. It's that they weren't taught. The
What
old way.
about now? When you say "what about this," "what about that," what do you mean by that?
I'm meaning
Explain
this.
that.
Well, why, for instance, you were taught a certain way to put your cart together. Just for instance, and these new kids come in and they don't do it that way. Well, why not? Because they were never taught, and they were never told why that goes the way it does. So when you have a code, for instance, and you get the crash cart, what are the two words everybody says? Oh, blank. And nobody knows what anything it is, even though it's all there. Well, you need to play with the stuff. You need to make the time to have these conversations, to break down those barriers, because people like to work with people that they like. And you're working so darn hard on the floor, you might as well enjoy the time you have with those people. And I know you're underworked, you're overworked and everything else, but the fact is, that's what this comes down to, is trying to create that next generation to be great like you are. And then if you're going to transition out of the hospital or whatever, and you're going to start your own business, you want to impart that wisdom to that next generation, whether they're nurses, whether they're CNAs, whether you're running a business of whatever kind. And you should try to get that level in your own business, that high expectations.
That's right. That's right. Angelique Partridge said, I love it, Doc. Boundaries, discipline, and being intentional are vital. This is great. And it is, because at the end of the day, if you do not have discipline, then you will, and it's thoughts. It starts with your thought. Your thoughts become your feelings become your actions become your realities, and your reality becomes your life. The problem with a lot of people, and the problem with the way that things go, is that people think that I can't do that. You're not designed to do everything, but you
Mm-hmm.
are designed to be the leader so that people can come into your company, and so people can do those things, so that you can delegate, you can provide those things that you need to provide. But being the leader of your company and showing up for your company is absolutely key.
To
Uh,
to that
Go ahead.
point, I just want to say one story. I'm reading one of the dad books, not dad, but Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Mhm.
And I think it was Henry Ford. They were asking him, why you're not so smart, why don't you answer all these questions? He's like, okay, come on in, answer me any question you want about anything in my company. They asked him a question, 1 second, gets his phone, gets the expert in, gets you know what, it's just like, the way I look at it is, I don't have to be the expert, I just have to be the quarterback. And all the books behind me, I just pull which book I need, and those are people. And I mean that in a great way.
Mhm.
Put people in positions to be successful, and put people in positions to win. And if you can do that, you can have a successful business. I mean, I started out with just me. I've got about 3 to 5, depending on the moment, instructors on time. And I'm just trying to build this thing out. And I think that it does take time. But to your point about intention, I had a number in my head I wanted to do. I want to make more money than my wife. And you know what? Unconsciously, I kept saying. All of a sudden, I realized I did my taxes. Like, holy geez, I actually did it. And I, it wasn't by accident. It wasn't. It was just. It just happened.
It's a thought.
It's a thought, and I just kept saying it to myself, and I had it all little stickies everywhere. And I think that there's something to be said for that. But I also do believe, and I know, just talking to you the couple of times that I have, you you have to, you're always nice, but being nice doesn't mean that you compromise. Sometimes no is no. And you have to, people respect people if they say what they're going to do and they do what they're going to say.
That's right.
And I think that, that's the one thing my old football coach used to tell me all the time: a man is what a man does. And your actions speak louder than your words, especially with the business. I mean, everything that goes out, and I know you probably teach this as well, has my information on it, because you never know. I've gotten phone calls 3, 5 years. I've been doing this over 12 years. I've gotten phone calls 5 years down the road. Oh yeah, I had your stuff on a card, a pencil, or whatever else. It sounds stupid, folks, but those $3, those 20-cent pencils or whatever they are, they make the difference,
That's good.
because it's not if, it's when they're going to need your service.
That's right.
And I think that that's something that your program does. And there's just a lot of things that being an entrepreneur, I mean, I get to take off when I want. It sounds really good until and then I still have to schedule time to take off because my assistant yells at me, you need to take off. But you can make that time.
Well, I mean, I think that it needs to be not that I think, I know, I have a coach. And so one of the things that we talk about is scheduled getaways. And
Mhm.
so I am very much about scheduled getaways. And so when I work for corporate, I used to take a vacation every 3 months. And so now I take a vacation every 3 months. So quarterly, in this quarterly sprints. So basically what you're doing is you're making sure that you are sprinting. And so you sprint during that quarter, you make your goals. Your goals are your goals. And every month, it's not, because people decide that they want to make these yearly goals, and it's not yearly goals. You need to do it per quarter,
I
because
like that.
then you understand when you're behind and for the yearly goal, right? And
Mhm.
so it's absolutely it's absolutely pertinent for that to happen. Well, it has been such a pleasure, Alex, to have you on here, talking to our beautiful nurses. Thank you for giving the knowledge that you have, and we look forward to just continuing to collaborate.
Anytime.
So if you want to learn how to monetize your knowledge, you can join our Facebook group. Again, it's Millionaire Nurse CEO. Also join our live event is coming up. Our next one is coming up in August. It's August 25th, 26th. Put it on your calendar and have it so that we want to see you in the room. Also, we have a master classes coming up in less than a week. Actually, it's next Tuesday, the 14th, and it's going to be how to monetize your knowledge as a nurse. And so I look forward to seeing you there, and you guys have a phenomenal rest of your day.